Canada's premiers will be getting together this week in Huntsville, Ontario, as the federal government faces down a quickly approaching trade deal deadline with the U.S. Our Parliament Hill correspondent Glen McGregor has a preview of what the leaders will be chatting about.
Yeah, less than 2 weeks to go before that August 1st deadline. That is the date that both the White House and the Prime Minister's office agreed to kind of bring to an end their ongoing trade dispute. The goal for the Canadian side is to get the Trump administration to back off all the tariffs, the broad 25%, possibly as high as 35% tariffs on all Canadian goods exported from Canada to the United States that Trump has threatened to raise from 25% to 35%. And then there are the sectoral tariffs, particularly on the auto sector and, as we heard this week, on the steel and aluminum sector. Mark Carney announcing on Wednesday a sort of a broad suite of measures that he was going to take to kind of help the industry deal with what is essentially a crippling tariff. At the 50% level that Trump raised the tariff to, there's really no possibility of making any kind of meaningful inroads into the U.S. market for Canadian exports, so they have to look elsewhere. So Carney announcing a whole suite of measures that are designed to protect the Canadian steel and aluminum markets, not from the U.S., but from foreign competitors, particularly China, which is accused of dumping a lot of product. So this is one of the issues that's going to be on the table on Tuesday when Mark Carney sits down to meet with the provincial and territorial premiers. The First Minister's meeting had been planned in advance. Doug Ford, though, decided to invite Carney because of the situation with the United States and the trade discussions coming down to the very end. The other thing that Carney is going to be looking for at this meeting is more feedback from the provincial premiers about their so-called nation-building projects. Back when they met in Saskatchewan earlier this summer, the premiers all discussed essentially their wish list for big projects. For Alberta, of course, it's more ways to get energy, oil and gas to ports so they can be exported to other markets, talking about building a pipeline to either northern British Columbia, possibly even into Ontario, and maybe even further on to where there's refining capacity in eastern Canada. The problem, though, with that project is it requires a private sector partner who's going to put up big bucks and wants to know that some of the regulatory uncertainty has been set aside. There's a conflict brewing between Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and British Columbia's Premier David Eby over a federal law that prevents the use of oil tankers in off parts of the British Columbia coast, mostly in the northern region. That is going to be a stumbling block for any company that's going to come along. So these are the kind of issues that Carney is hoping to work out at that First Minister's meeting, but really they are all looking to see for an update from Carney. Where does the negotiation stand? And what does he think could be the ultimate end of this? Is it possible we could get those tariffs removed completely? Well, last week, Carney did discuss this and saying that it seems unlikely now. He hasn't seen the evidence that Canada is going to secure any kind of trade agreement with the U.S. that doesn't include some form of tariffs. That, of course, is going to be difficult for Carney politically because during the election campaign, he said he was the guy who was going to stand up to Donald Trump. He was going to get the best possible deal. But if we do end up with an agreement in which it does involve some form of tariffs above and beyond what we had under the USMCA, the CUSMA or new NAFTA agreement, that is going to be politically difficult. So Carney's looking to kind of get that Team Canada vibe going again, get all the premiers on side. So these last 2 weeks of negotiations with the U.S., we are presenting a united front. That may be easier than it sounds because there are some schisms within the table around the premiers. And there's also, the political consideration here that if Carney doesn't get that deal, it's going to be awkward for him politically. That meeting scheduled for Tuesday in Huntsville, Ontario. Glen McGregor, City News, Ottawa.